Hi everyone, welcome to my channel and to this time-lapse version of a little white Westie in soft pastel. I hope that you enjoy seeing him come together quickly in this speedy version, and of course, as always, there will be a full-length tutorial over on my Patreon if you'd like to learn how to do this. But as always, please do hit subscribe here on YouTube and have a look through all of my playlists. So the first thing I'll mention is that I'm using one of my favourite formats for this one, a square format. I really love when a composition works nicely as a square, as I think they frame up beautifully. For this one, I'm using the Canson velvet paper, which I've been using a lot in the last year or so. And the piece is 12 inches by 12 inches. I'm using mostly my Unison pastels and just a few pastel pencils here and there, as you'll see, but the majority of the work here gets done with the big pastel sticks. So a very simple background. I've simplified what's in the photo reference just to go for a nice complementary, quite a plain background. But at the same time, even with a plain background, I find that it serves a purpose. So you'll notice that I've made one side of the background lighter than the other, and that is to help enhance the edges of this little light coloured dog. And I say light coloured dog because although it's a white Westie, there's actually not one bit of pure white in this painting. And that was what partially attracted me to this reference image of little Jasper. I really liked the fact that there was so many colours reflected on his white coat. And that sometimes happens when you have a photo reference that was taken indoors, especially because you get the warmth coming from the overhead lights. And I think you can see that along the top of Jasper's head. You can see the yellow colours there, and that's because of the warm bulbs inside the house. And then there perhaps is a window or something in front of him because we get some of the cool light then coming from outside somewhere. And this, especially on a white coloured animal, creates such a rainbow of colours. So although that was what attracted me to this reference image, I realised as soon as I started just what a challenge I had ahead of me. So not one bit of pure white anywhere on this little dog. And you're about to see all of the many, many colours that went into creating a very colourful coat that in the end hopefully reads as a white coloured animal. So I always find it so amazing how much colour you can throw at something to depict what is, in the end, a white thing. So in this case, there are lots of warm tones. So we've got the yellows, like I mentioned, across the top of his head. We've got a lot of warmth coming from the lights there. And then, as you would often find, there are some of these like almost fleshy colours that I'm using inside the ears and around the eyes. Basically colours to help me create some contrast within the fur to create depth. So if I come in straight away with my lightest values, I've really got nowhere else to go. It's very hard to show the light and shade if you jump in first with your lightest values. So I'm trying to look for the colours that I can see between the clumps of hair. What's the darkest value that I can see right in at the roots of the hairs, and I come in with that first. And that gives me a base layer on which I can start to build my way gradually towards those lightest values. But you can see just how colourful the top of his head looks at this point. I don't have all of my highlight colours on there yet. Instead, I've got all of these blue violets, pale lilac colours, through to the warmer tones that I'm using, like I mentioned, those kind of fleshy tones, some sort of dull beige colours, a lot of colours that are quite difficult to describe actually. And I often say if a colour is difficult to describe, it's probably quite useful, as many of my paintings really rely on those subtle in-between colours. They're usually light tints, so like a particular colour mixed with white to make a tint. Or sometimes these in-between shades that seem like a strong colour that has had a little bit of grey mixed into it. So tints and shades are really important in my work. And in this piece, it's almost entirely the lighter end of the tonal value scale. So nothing that I'm using is extremely dark. There are some dark browns involved in around the nose and the mouth area. But pretty much most of the face starts with, at the darkest, a sort of mid-tone dusky blue colour, which is grey 8 from Unison, one of my favourite colours to use. And then along with some other mid-tones, I work my way up to those lighter tints. But you can see how that starts to give some dimension, some depth to the fur. Because when you look at the photo reference, there really isn't any pure white. And if I'm going to make it look really 3D and convincing, I've got to include the colours that I can see. And in a lot of cases, I'm enhancing or exaggerating some of the colours that I see. But my main aim is to focus on the tonal value, so how light or dark an area needs to be. Beyond that, I can add more vibrance to my colour choice. I can make it more interesting. But the thing that I'm really trying to capture quite accurately is always the tonal value, so how light or dark it needs to be. So you can see here I'm just working back over the fur. Once I get to a certain point, then I can come back in with some of those brightest values, which again, there's no pure white. My brightest values here are a very pale yellow tint and a very pale blue tint. There's also quite a lot of blue in this coat. And I start to work my way down the muzzle area, coming down towards the nose. And there's a bit more darkness around the fur surrounding the nose and the mouth, which is quite common with a white coloured dog. But a really fun photo reference to work with. I've painted many Westies in the past, and they're often quite a different colour palette each time because it really depends on the lighting present in the photo reference. I've certainly painted many Westies that were a bit less colourful than this one. But as I said at the start, that's one of the things that I really liked about this photo. The fact that I could use a lot of colour. And of course, as always, my main aim is to try and capture the character of the individual. So although I've painted a lot of Westies, each one has been unique. Each one has its own character. And that can be said for most dog breeds. You can paint many of the same breed, but never paint the same dog twice. So it's looking for those little things that make each one unique, the little recognizable features. It's quite often within the animal's expression, which is not just from the actual eyes, but from the eyebrows, and similarly to humans with the mouth and the nose, all of the features are equally as important. So I will go into a huge amount of detail in the tutorial series of this one over on my Patreon if you'd like to learn along in real time. But I hope that you've enjoyed seeing this speedy version and seeing little Jasper the Westie come together. As always, please do hit subscribe here on my YouTube channel. But thank you very much for watching, and until next time, happy pasteling.